All right, everybody. Hey, we are back again. Excited to be back here again with Shaun Boyd. It's really exciting. And so we've talked about this a little bit before about our last conversation with TJ about how we're doing some really invasive conversations about
Good way to
why,
put it.
like just what we're doing at Arrowhead and why we're doing it and what we care about here. And TJ and I talking about race, but really about our friendship was really amazing time. Gosh, like an hour or so. We're not going to spend as long with Shaun today, but I'm really excited to get the chance to talk to him and really make an introduction of him as part of our team. And I'll let Shaun really explain how we met, really. But Shaun's coming on as our COO, and mostly because I'm extraordinarily just busy doing nothing, and Shaun's going to help move us to doing something in the company, really. And but either way, I find him to be an incredibly sweet and wonderfully genuine person who's incredibly smart and impassioned about the work that we're doing along the lines of coaching and mental health and things like that. But Shaun, I'll just toss right to you, man, and just say I'm really
Oh, no, I was enjoying the compliments if you want to just keep them going.
I mean, I will keep the compliments going. I'm really excited that we get to chat today and just be, like we've just developed a really amazing friendship over not even a year. It's really been pretty quick. And sometimes we do crazy things like this. Sometimes you make fast decisions and we see someone that's talented, you put them in a position. But most of all, I just enjoy your friendship and your company and the way in which you think is great. But really, it's heart stuff, that I can smell on people. It's when there are just some things you can't fake, and heart is one of them.
Yeah,
and,
that's true.
And I'm just really excited to have you on the team, and we get to. This is the first of a series of times we're going to be talking. You're going to be leading some of these conversations with some of our other coaches and things like that. So I'm going to shut up now. To tell us a little bit about your life and your story. You've got some really fun details about your life people might love to hear.
Sure.
I do this question: if you knew me, you would know. So we'll start with that. All right, Shaun. If you knew me, you would know. Fill in the blank. Go for it.
Oh, yeah. Okay, we'll start right there. If you knew me, you would know that I was in a band with my two brothers for about 7 years, almost 8 years. And yes, we were compared to the Jonas Brothers continually. Our name was 3 Union, the number 3, the word union, all one word. We were very specific about that. People got it wrong all the time. They do a 3 and then a space union with a capital U. It's the whole thing, just 3 Union. All right. So anyway, if you are really curious, I mean, we'll probably talk about it a little bit, but if you really want to know more about that, you can just look it up on YouTube, Spotify, all kinds of wonderful blackmail material there. You can discover.
We will do that. I will do that. Everyone, let's give these guys another round 2, right? Coming back.
We always talked about a 3 Union reunion. So
that's right. A revival tour, I'm sure, for another 7 years, right? That's what you want?
Oh, yeah. Yep. I'm sure we still have some fans who would love to see that happen. But
Great. So you did that, man. You did that for like 7 years, and then what happened after that?
Man,
during that time, we're going to talk a lot about mental health and coaching. I mean, just why is this a big deal? And I don't know why you want to work with me.
Right.
For any reason.
Well, truthfully, I mean, to move forward in the story, we kind of have to move backward a little bit and just give you a little bit more context of my life growing up. So both my parents were missionaries. So grew up as a missionary kid, had really great, loving parents who taught me a lot of amazing things. And I grew up in a very religious household, you could say. So, I mean, as a kid, we would memorize Bible verses and we were like, go to church multiple times a week, not just Sunday. So I had all the right language for all the problems that ever came up in my life, and felt like I had all the right motivations. But about 7 years into doing this band thing, and we started when we were in high school. So high school into kind of college years, like really developmental times where a lot of people are just discovering who they are and where they fit in the world. But to me, I felt like I already knew. We jumped right into this thing, and I was like, yes, this is what I was born to do. I was made to be in this band. I love it. And then, man, 7 years in, well, probably more like 6, but I hit a wall. And I just realized, like, I I had all of the right answers. I felt like I knew what I wanted to do, but I had no life on the inside,
Mm,
no passion. It was a lot of times it was like pulling teeth to get me to do the things that I knew I should be doing. And I didn't know why. I thought maybe I just didn't, I didn't have the vision statement crafted well enough. I didn't have the language articulated well enough. But, and I tell everyone, this is all I see myself doing. But I couldn't pretend anymore. There was a season in my life where I was, during later in the band years, I'd wake up and the first thought that I would have waking up was, I hate my life.
wow.
And I didn't know why. And I didn't have any of the tools or any of the resources to process any of that. So I would do what, really anyone would do and just stuff it down, pretend like, that's, don't know why I thought that was weird, and just move on with my day. But I couldn't keep ignoring it. I literally remember playing a show. I'm there. I'm a drummer. I was playing drums, and just this thought came to my mind as you're playing. And I mean, I don't know. As a musician, it's kind of funny. Like, you get so good at it, you're literally like having a conversation with yourself, or just thinking about what you're going to do the day while you're performing. Like,
That's right.
You know what I'm talking about.
Yep, totally.
And you're like, man, what am I having for dinner tonight? And anyway.
While I'm hitting the hi-hat,
Yeah, exactly. While I'm using all four of my appendages and singing at the same time.
Right. Oh, that's right. You're playing the drums and singing too, by the way. Let's so the people understand that.
That's right. You got to know.
Yeah.
So anyway, I had this thought while we were playing, I hate this. And that was a really offensive thought to me, because, I would always tell people I love what I'm doing. But this thought just out of me out of nowhere. And I couldn't stop it before it came into my mind of I hate what I'm doing right now. And after that show, I realized, okay, I need to start paying attention to what's actually going on inside of me. But that was terrifying, because I'd never actually taken a look inside of my heart before and opened myself up to feeling what might actually be going on. And I didn't have any kind of relationships in my life that felt like that was a safe place to go there. So it was a really challenging time, just starting to uncover all that was inside of me. A lot of the fears and the doubts and the uncertainty that I had, realizing not only do I not love what I do, I don't like who I am. I felt totally fake. People, would see me on this platform and see me as a leader kind of amongst our peers. But on the inside, I felt like a hypocrite. People saw me as a role model, but I mean, just to be really authentic and vulnerable in this conversation, I was, not only did I not love myself, not only did I hate myself, but I was hopelessly trapped in pornography and masturbation.
Yeah.
And for any of you who might be listening to this call, you may be on one side of the fence or the other in regards to that issue. But for me, growing up in a Christian household, that was at least for me growing up, there was drugs and alcohol was pretty low to the bottom, and then pornography and masturbation was
right there.
Right there. I mean, you were basically, you couldn't go much lower other than just straight up rebellion. So
yeah.
So for me personally, it was absolutely devastating and debilitating. So I felt like I had two different lives, one life where everyone loved and respected and looked up to me, and this other one where I just felt like a complete failure, completely hopeless. And I don't know what else to say about that, but
yeah, I mean, just to your point, you're right to address everyone, in that, because I think whether sort of regardless of where people land in their ideology or doctrine, or whether or not, they were Christians growing up or not, I think that there's something really human about that revelation that most people get to of I'm not who I say I am, and I'm not all of these expectations that I've tried to meet. I'm not the story that I give to everyone else.
Yep.
And that creates such a tension on the inside of your heart, and this separation and the disassociation, with your own pain, because it's what we know, we get the affirmation from doing the quote unquote right thing, right? Or
Exactly.
doing what people want us to do, living up to the expectations of our parents or our friends or the community that we came from, whatever that is, right? And then oftentimes it just creates this despair, right? So that's what I hear you communicating. So like, what came out of the despair? You know, like, what did it create? Being hopelessly trapped is really like, that's really dark language to
Yeah.
describe, you know, what I can only assume is partially, if not in whole, your self concept. And we'll talk about this a little bit more about you sort of like your desire, your passion for mental health and wellness, behavioral wellness, and you're tying this bow and this knot for us right now about not just where you've been, but then what did that create that really demanded attention? How did you pay attention to it?
Yeah. It's a great question. I mean, what it led me to have to do is just completely deconstruct my life and work through a lot of the things, like you were saying, the expectations that I had for myself of who I was supposed to be, what I was supposed to believe, the way I was supposed to act. You know, especially as a Christian, there's, you know, you could create this massive list of all the things you're supposed to believe as a Christian. And I just had to go through that list and be so like completely vulnerable and honest with myself. Do I actually believe any of these things? And I had to go through that list and be honest and be like, actually, you know what? I don't know if I believe any of this. Truthfully, I've been saying I'm a Christian for, I was like, you know, 20 something at this point.
Yeah.
I don't know if I am, because I actually don't know if I believe these things. Because, and here's the thing, like I could only get to that place because I realized, I've been trying to convince myself that I believe them, but I was not living a life like I did, if that makes sense. Like what I said I believed and the way I was acting, especially in what I was doing, like on the inside and struggling with pornography and masturbation, was so incongruent. And I just knew I couldn't fake it anymore. I couldn't just find read a new book or learn something new about Christianity. Like I had to get real with myself. And so what that led me to was just totally deconstructing all of those things. And in that process, I realized I couldn't do it alone. There was no way, like if I was just going to do this by myself, I knew that I was going to completely go to a very dark place.
Mm-hmm.
I knew that I had to find people who would be safe. So there were a few men in my life that I approached and began to share some of these things with. And this fear of, if people knew these questions I was asking, if people knew the things that I was doing in secret, they would never love who I am. Everyone loved this fake image of myself that I had created and got all kinds of acceptance, but none of that had any impact on me.
Yeah.
I could never actually feel or let any of that in, because the real me believed that I was a failure and I was a piece of, I'll use better language, piece of crap, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, right, totally, yeah.
So it wasn't until I took a incredibly risky step and brought other people into my life that I didn't even know if they'd be safe. I just hoped that they were. Like, you know, but I knew I had to go for it. And they showed me unconditional love like I'd never experienced it before.
Mm-hmm.
And it was through those relationships that I made with, I mean, really, like they were like fathers to me, who came alongside me and walked me through some of the darkest places in my life and stood beside me, and loved me and accepted me, even when I was still struggling with pornography and masturbation, like hardcore. They weren't afraid of it. They didn't walk away.
Yeah.
And so it was through those relationships that I was actually able to begin to believe the things that I always wanted to believe, because there was no experience tied to a lot of the things that I wanted to believe, of like, you know, as a Christian, that Jesus loves me unconditionally. It's easy to say, but do you really actually believe that? And I didn't have any experience of that from other people. And so when I actually opened myself up and allowed myself to experience that from other men, it actually began to rewrite the story in my head from these relationships. And so for me, that's a really big reason why I'm so passionate about coaching and counseling, is we need those relationships in our life, people who will come alongside us in our process in the darkest places, who will stand with us as we're asking really scary questions and walk with us through that process, and not just give us the right answers, but also open us up to actually experiencing the realness of those answers.
Yeah, and the realness of unconditional committed attention.
Yeah.
You know, you know, you said something, you know, that I think is really important, that I wanted to double click on, which is that you were just thinking, would anybody love me and accept me in this space, you know? And we know as like therapists, you know, as coaches, you know, that like sometimes, if not most of the time, behavior is the manifestation, right? An unwanted behavior is the manifestation of some other thing, some other hurt, some other broken relationship, some other thing, you know. To whatever degree you're comfortable, what was that? You know, and then you needed to bring people along to help you figure out, not just because you needed to change the behavior, right? You had something you didn't want, but ultimately, you know, you had something else you didn't want, you know, which was the pain that was driving that behavior or those actions anyway. What can you say about that, if not even just about the process? How long did it take? What did you have to relent on? What did you have to concede to? What were the sacrifices you had to make about how you see the world and what you had believed about yourself? Like, these really strong beliefs, you know, about like, I'm not worthy, right? I'm not worthy of being connected with. If anyone found out, right, the shame, if anyone really saw me, would I really be worth connecting with? Would I be worth being in a relationship with anyone? Would I be? I can just hear it through all the sessions and even my own life. Like if anyone found out, right, how many times, right? And some of us sort of resort to the worst, you know, like I might as well just kill myself, or I might as well just disappear or run away, or all those things happen. That despair is so deep, but it's not the behavior alone, right? You know, this is how we know that the dysfunction, the dysfunctional behavior is a root cause or a manifestation of a dysfunctional or a disordered relationship with people. So oftentimes it's parents, it's family relationships, sometimes it's friendships, sometimes it's someone who you don't even know said something negative about you and it was sticky, and you carry it for years, right? And you've defined your entire life on trying to avoid that thing by doing something else. So I think to your point, like, you lived the life, you walked, you know, in a certain way in front of people as a way to avoid the thing that really hurt. And when you couldn't avoid it, you resorted to something else that you did in the shadows. To try and cope with that. So what do you think about that? What does that bring up for you when I mention that?
A whole lot of stuff.
And not everything is for the tape, y'all. We're not going to put Shaun on like a ton of blast here. He's been really vulnerable, you know, but to whatever degree, even any advice that you want to give people, but feel free to share any more about your own story on that to your own comfort level, you know?
Yeah. Man, there's a lot I could share. I'm just trying to use wisdom and what the right thing is.
Right, exactly.
Sure.
I get that.
Well, for the sake of this being our first time, we might end up going into more depth in the future about very specific experiences, which I do want to. But for now, for the sake of time as well, I'll maybe just be a little broad. But as a kid, young kid, probably 8 or 9, I had some sexual experiences that were very confusing to me as a young boy. And I just, through those experiences, I came to believe that there was something just wrong with me. And the narrative that I began to believe, though I didn't have language for it as a young kid, was that I'm a monster.
Mm.
That there's something very gross and disgusting inside of me. And if anyone saw it, they would be totally repulsed by what they saw. Again, just a young kid, like I had no idea what was going on. But those were things that began to fester. And then a few years later, my older brother got caught looking at pornography. And my parents were, of course, devastated by this whole experience. And I know their intentions were great, but the way they handled it was not so great. And because of the way they handled it, it reinforced that narrative of, oh, because it was, again, it was sexual, and what I had experienced was also sexual. So it, was tied together. And so it just reaffirmed that belief of, if anyone sees what's really inside of me, then they're gonna run away. They're not gonna want to be with me. They're gonna reject me, or they're gonna try and come in and fix me. And so that was really what set up so much of my life moving forward, was this belief that I was a monster. And so all of my actions coming out of that, especially in regards to like presenting myself as a role model and someone to look up to, and someone who's hardworking and motivated and disciplined, was all an attempt to combat this narrative that I'm a monster and that there's something wrong with me. Everything I did was to try and prove that that wasn't true. But because nobody actually knew the truth, and everyone could tell me, wow, Shaun, you're so amazing, all blah, 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 like it could only get skin deep.
Yeah.
And so, then of course, naturally led to me looking for other forms of comfort, other forms of love, other forms of intimacy, because no one could give me what I actually needed. So that's what turned me to pornography and masturbation, because it was a way to get that need met in a way that was safe, in a way that I didn't have to expose myself, in a way that I didn't have to be vulnerable, and I could feel good for just a moment.
Yeah, totally.
So
makes sense.
Yeah,
totally makes sense. And I can't express, just the gratitude for even you sharing that much. I think that, it's courageous. This is why we do this. If anyone asks us any questions, people ask me questions all of the time. I think that so many of us have had unwanted sexual experiences when we were younger, even when we got older, things of that sort. I'm in that camp. And I think that there's so many people that, we end up working with, who have the same scenarios. I can't count the number of clients, on both of my hands, where people have experienced traumatic things. And to me, I just want to say, one, just thank you for being vulnerable.
Yeah.
And two, just to recognize that, hey, look, like this world is a really dark place. It can be, and really weird things happen. We're most vulnerable, especially when we're in our vulnerable ages, in our vulnerable time periods. We feel like we should be protected, and no one like intentionally took their eyes off of us, right? Our parents were loving, all of that. And sometimes stuff happens because while the devil or Satan, for our purposes, has an assignment on our lives, he only has that assignment because he recognizes, that God has purpose for our lives, that God has purpose for us and has designed us, and has put his mark on us and his hand on us, and so he tries to get us in this really formative time of development, that if he can bring a thought, just like you said, I am a monster, right? That thing is, let's just think about it for a second. That's such a powerful statement. I know people that don't struggle with that, but they struggle with this or they struggle with that. And we get right down to the same narrative. I think I'm a monster. It's not even enough to just say that, I don't like myself a little bit. A lot of people, if they were really honest, actually struggle with that narrative. I think I am a monster. And if anybody ever knew I was a six-headed freak, that they would never treat me with respect again, that I would never be valued. I would never have the things that I want in my life. I would never be worthy of it, right? So because I can't be worthy of it, because I actually believe I'm actually made a monster, created one.
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Then I have to go through all of this behavior, right? This like I'm gonna be in the band. I'm gonna be the Christian version of the Jonas Brothers, right? You know, who actually stayed Christian, you know,
Yeah, right.
right?
Didn't take the creative wings off.
Yeah, you know, or they stayed doing Christian music. I think, you know, the Jonas Brothers are still Christians, from what I can tell. But you know, but it's soon, but you know, but like stayed in that vein of like music, you know, in that vein of performance, and that became a part of the story that you tell the world about yourself, but to yourself, saying this is what I need to do, and you create a relationship with the image that you put out into the world, as though that is the thing that is going to get you everything you've ever wanted in life.
Yep.
Approval, affirmation, right? Somehow I'll be able to trick everybody into believing that I'm a decent person,
Yep.
right? And I'll get everything I've ever wanted. And all of it comes down to this massive lie and controversy that you tell yourself, right? That whatever happened to you is your fault.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. And you know, I think that's it's a crime. It's unjust, you know, for anyone to have to go through that. But then, you know, you get to this place, right? You can talk about this, about what began the restorative process. How are you now able to be honest, you know, about certain things, you know, that happened? And then what does the future look like? What have you accepted, you know, now about who you are as a person? And then take us into this new role at Arrowhead, and what you're feeling, and why you're committed to really helping us get through some of our most challenging times. You know, I think just because of the nature of the world, challenging for us because we really want to make a huge impact in raising up leaders and things of that sort, you know, so that we can see a more peaceful, more restorative and constructive world. We have a small part to play in that. And you're here to really help us do that. But first, you know, what was the turnaround for you? You brought some guys into your life, but then you got to get that insight for yourself.
Yep.
A little bit, right? Still a work in progress, like all of us are, I'm sure, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, the restorative process, it started with acknowledging what I really believed to be true about myself. Because even though I didn't have language for it, I was living it. I was living out of it. So it took time. It took, honestly, hours for me, and, you know, journaling and writing and thinking, processing. And I'm an introvert, so some of those things come naturally to me, but I still don't even really like to journal, truthfully. But I do it because it's helpful for me. To get things on paper, because I do believe that being able to articulate and put words to what we're feeling gives us power over it. Or at least power to change the narrative, or to change things. So that was the beginning of that restorative process, was finding the words and putting words to what I really believed to be true about how I felt about myself. I had never, I mean, for, you know, until I was in my early 20s, had never realized that I hated myself, even though I did, through basically most of my life up until that point. But it wasn't until I actually took the courageous step to admit, this is how I feel, this is real, this is what's going on, that I was then able to then let what other people had to say come to the table and actually change that narrative, change that. And so I just, that continued to be the process as I began to discover more freedom, is getting more and more real and authentic with who I was. And that was really challenging. I mean, really challenging for my family too, because again, like the fake image that I presented didn't stop with, you know, people outside of our family. It's who my family thought I was. My mom especially took it really hard because in a lot of ways I almost turned into a different person. So it was challenging, and that was hard because it caused a lot of relational tension, and feelings were hurt. But I was like, I can't go back to pretending like everything's okay. I can't go back to pretending like I'm something I'm not.
Yeah. Just feeling
So
like that expectation of perfection,
yeah,
regardless of where it comes from, you know, you just, it wears on you.
exactly.
It
Yeah.
wears, you know.
So that became my biggest thing, is like, I want to be 100% me no matter where I am, and let people either love or hate me for it. And it was in that process that I actually began to discover that people really did love who I was. They loved me for me. And I knew that it had to be true, because I was just being myself, you know, and with all of my problems and all of my shortcomings, and people loved to be around me. So the process of healing um, began through vulnerability. And that's what I discovered, was that the healing I had longed for, the belief that I could be loved no matter what, was on the other side of vulnerability. And I
Mm,
just had to step into that. And it was so terrifying at times, especially like, and I'll use a specific example of opening up to other women about my struggle with pornography and masturbation. That was really challenging, because I always thought that if a woman found out this part of me, that they would never trust me, they'd never feel safe with me, they'd never want to be around me. But I knew that, you know, and it's not like I went up to every single woman and was like, "Hey, did you know?" But it was, you know,
yeah, right.
women that I knew were safe, and that I knew that I could trust at some level. And I began to, again, step into vulnerability, and found so much love and acceptance, and just the lies that I believed about myself began to lose their power, because there was another narrative coming in, and a narrative that was also partnered with experience, of women who would come in and hold me like I was a young boy,
Mm,
you know, who just wanted to be loved.
yeah,
Uh,
powerful.
women who would tell me that that I'm an example of what a real man looks like,
Mm,
because I never believed that. So it was opening myself up to not just hearing it, but also experiencing it, that began to bring healing. And I'll say, as just as an encouragement, that my story can be your story. That when I began to experience healing in my relationships with other women, that I haven't touched pornography since,
mm-hmm.
and that there is freedom out there for you. Like, it's not something that you have to deal with the rest of your life. I believe that. I believe that there is healing out there for every man and every woman who is struggling with that and is looking for freedom. It's out there. And that's why I'm so passionate about what we do. Because I didn't, you know, growing up, I didn't know that. I thought this was always going to be something I'm going to struggle with, and I'm always going to have to fight and grit my teeth and white knuckle it. But there are, what you need to be free is out there. And that's why I'm so passionate about what we're doing with Arrowhead. Is we want to create a resource for people to find the truth that they need, the experiential truth, to help them be able to find healing, not just be able to cope with their problems, but to actually find healing and restoration and freedom. Um, so yeah, sorry,
It's so good, man. I'm so grateful for you. You've been so raw. We'll go back. We'll listen to it first. We'll be like, what in the world? You know, Shaun didn't expect he was going to get emotional right then. But
it happens.
you know, we just planned on talking. We didn't know he
That's
was going
true.
to end up crying in the end, but and being really emotive and honest. And you know, I'm really grateful, you know, for how aligned we are in all of this. You know, I think that um, yeah, there's freedom for people. We want people to be free, you
Yeah.
know, and we're not, you know, saying by any stretch of the imagination, you know, that as coaches or as counselors, you know, that
Oh no, yeah.
there aren't woes, you know what I mean? And I think that people come in to the various conversations about things that they want to change from different entry points. And and we know everyone's got a different background. Not everyone has a thing, that is monolithic. There is no cure, for the downsides of the human condition outside of getting to heaven when all our tears get wiped away.
Right.
And we are transformed completely. However, there is this thing, that we believe, and I've said this before, Arrowhead is not an expressly faith-based org. However, we're very spiritual. Many of us are Christians that are on the team, but I've never just looked for a Christian, not just someone to your point, Shaun, like never just someone who just does the service of it.
Yep.
Right. That very experience that you're talking about when someone just held you like a little boy is exactly what we want. That's exactly the kind of place and comfort and skill and real compassion, authentic and intuitive compassion that we're bringing to the table, that we want and aspire to bring to the table and keep each other accountable to, because this is less about whether or not who has a coaching certification or a counseling degree. This is about the character of loving people where they're at, not judging them, walking over a long period of time with people who need to feel that very thing that you described, right? To know that they're not a monster, right? To know that they can be a good man and they can be and that they are good men and good women, right? That they're not transforming into or out of being the monster and into a good person. They already are a good person.
Yeah.
They're already great. They're already loved. They're already wonderful. And our work is to, one, help them connect with it, believe it, to your point, and then two, to activate it in the world so that other people, like we are just a small team, like we can't do everybody here. Like we can't, but we really want those people, who believe with a kernel of truth, a kernel of faith, that there's something in them that is useful for the world to hear. That there's something in them that is powerful for transforming the sphere of influence that they're in through this kind of vulnerability. It's not just going into your corporate world and then just saying, that is it. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just going to be more skilled or whatever it is. It's just not about that. It's about something way more interesting than that. It's about redefining leadership in our generation in the context of this kind of vulnerability, even when people will hate you for that kind of vulnerability.
Yeah.
Right? The transformation that comes out of that kind of spillage, gets all over people who want to be as honest, if not more so, than what we give them permission to be. Definitely. So that is where we're at, man. I'm really grateful for you. I know we only have like 3 minutes left. Anything else you want to say? Great encouragement. Any final words on everything? I know you just breathe and let the tears go,
Yeah. Man. Yeah, there's so much on my heart. I think just to kind of bring it all back to like Arrowhead, like you were saying, just to add in my own piece, as COO, and it's just, we didn't even talk about how I got started. So or how I got into joining the company. So we'll have to maybe do another session on that. But because of what I've been so blessed to experience, my heart and desires to be able to give people that same kind of experience and freedom. And God's just been forming a dream in my heart that emotional health and mental health would be the standard for humanity and not the exception. And I feel like for so long that's been the case. It's very rare to find people who have actually gone to those places within themselves and found healing and have found love and acceptance. And and we're in a culture where we've now swung the pendulum so far to the other side, where we've heightened emotion to such a superior level that it now trumps everything else. And while I'm all for growing in emotional awareness and intelligence, I look around and I'm not seeing things get better. Anxiety and depression are like memes now because it's so common and so normal. And I'm just like, there is a healing and a freedom that is not being experienced, even though we think we are free because we can express our emotions when our parents didn't. And so that's what I want to be able to bring with Arrowhead is actually bringing a solution and answers to those things. So anyway, I'm kind of rambling, but those are just
that's so great, man. Want to change, want to make mental and emotional health the standard for humanity. And I think you make a brilliant point, you know, that while a lot of people are really investing in this, you know, there's no way that one counselor or one counseling company or coaching company can really get us to the tipping point that we need. We need compelling people to come into our spaces, right? And we commit, you know, to helping them get to that awareness, but also to give them agency to go out and do that for other people, with other people, even scalable into organizations and businesses and whatever it is. We've got to see a massive movement, you know, of what's happening. What's going on out in the streets today, you know, is something that we have to take some responsibility for getting to that inoculation that'll help us be better as a society and as a culture. 100%. It's us. We are responsible for it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So, hey, man, come on. I'm so grateful for you. I'm glad we get to have this conversation today. I said we're just going to have a natural conversation. This was more natural than I thought it would be. I'm really excited about that. And
here we are.
That's right. Here we are. I really appreciate you. And thanks again for your vulnerability, but also for your leadership in this. And there's some things you can't fake. You know, some things can only be caught. They can't be taught. And what is true about you, Shaun, and about your leadership in our organization right now is that, you know, we will do that as much as we can, you know, with your tutelage, with your leadership because of your heart, you know. And so let's make sure that we tend to that garden, you know, not just for you, but for anyone else that is listening right now and interested in wanting to know more about what we do or coming onto the team or whatever it is. We're just growing. We're taking over the world like Pinky and the Brain. So we're trying to do. Okay. Like yeah. I really appreciate you, man. And we will be talking to you next time. You're going to be probably leading one of these conversations. Who's to say, right? We'll do our best.
All right.
Love you. I love you too. All right.